Hey everyone, it's Saoirse, and this is the first video that I'm filming in my garage, which I recently renovated. It's got a really moody vibe and a lot of plants, and plants feature heavily in the book that we're going to talk about today, so I thought it was the perfect spot. So this book is My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. I keep calling it Rebecca when I'm talking about it. It is not Rebecca, but Daphne du Maurier did write Rebecca. And that and Jamaica Inn are the only other two of her books that I've read so far. This one was published in 1951, and I'm going to read you the back, and we'll get into it. One of the world's great storytellers, Daphne du Maurier, spins a dark Gothic tale of passion and unswerving love that turns to suspicion and fear. Rachel, a woman of exquisite beauty, descends on the great Cornwall estate of Philip Ashley. Despite his aroused suspicions, she soon enchants him. In this tale of good and evil, Philip must decide whether the glorious Rachel, the recent mysterious widow of his beloved cousin, is out to destroy him, or is the innocent victim of devious men, with a tremendous longing to be loved. His fate and his future lie in the answer to this deadly question. Okay, a lot of things I hate about that description and about this cover. I just don't feel like any of that really represents this story. I will always complain about these editions of du Maurier's books, which seem to be the only ones that I can find in stores, but they make them look like really cheap romances, which that's not what they are. And passion and unswerving love, like, once again, that's not really what it is. Tale of good and evil, I wouldn't really say that. I would more categorize her books as, like, psychological, sometimes thrillers. Sometimes they can be really slow moving, but she always has this sense of unease and tension in her books that makes me keep reading even when not much is going on. So you don't even meet Rachel for like 70 pages. And that was like the most exciting part of the book for me, honestly, because I was like, who is this lady? So basically, if you haven't read this, there's going to be spoilers, but if you have and you just need a refresher, Philip Ashley is an orphan, and he's basically raised by his cousin Ambrose, and Ambrose is much older than him. And Ambrose ends up going to Italy for the summer for his health, or for the winter, and he stays there a long, long time, and it turns out he's met one of his distant cousins, Rachel, and marries her. And then he dies. So he never comes back to England, and Rachel shows up. And Philip is determined to hate her. Like, he thinks she's going to be the devil. And then it's pretty expertly done the way that Philip turns and becomes, I wouldn't say in love with her, obsessed with her. Very childishly infatuated with her, because it's not love. And because it's written in first person, that can be kind of hard to do, to be like, and now I'm going insane. But she manages to do it where we just kind of follow along with it and go, yep, we're on this ride with you, Philip. You're now losing your mind, and we don't really question it. So anyway, some bits I want to talk about. I enjoyed this. It's good. I don't think it's as gripping or as sympathetic as Rebecca or Jamaica Inn. And when I say that, I mean I wasn't as sympathetic toward the character, the main character. So the narrator of Rebecca, I remember being really sympathetic toward her. And same with Jamaica Inn. This guy is not likable. He becomes more and more unlikable as the book goes on, but he's just not, I'm not really rooting for him, so I was struggling for a minute, like, ooh, am I gonna have trouble with this book, because I don't like when I can't root for somebody, but it was okay in the end. So I think this book is less dramatic than the other two that I mentioned. It's a story about a will that was never signed. It's about finances, it's about greed, with a bit of blind obsession. So I don't think it's as dramatic as the others. Um, but she still has that sense of foreboding, and you're just like, I'm uncomfortable and I don't know why, which is one of my favorite feelings when I'm reading, and in life, I guess. So we still don't know if she's guilty by the end of the book, which is like, oh, Daphne, why did you not? You couldn't just commit to yes or no. But my guess is yes, she's guilty. It seems very obvious that she is, but then maybe the author's playing with us. Maybe Rachel has nothing to do with anybody getting sick or dying. Maybe it's just a coincidence that it looks like she's poisoning people. But yeah, I feel like I should give just a very quick sentence about what happens. When Philip turns 25, he inherits the estate and everything and all the money, and he signs it over to Rachel, saying that if Ambrose had signed the will that he initially wrote, this would have been Rachel's anyway, so I give it to her, when really it's just because he's obsessed with her. He tries to get her to marry him. She doesn't want to marry him. But they sleep together, which he takes as her saying that she'll marry him, which is not what it was. And then he finds all this evidence that she poisoned Ambrose and that she's been poisoning him, and is actually going to run off with Rinaldi, who's her friend from Italy and sort of her advisor. So in the end, Philip lets her go for a walk in the garden, knowing that this bridge over the sunken garden is not finished, and she falls in and dies. And he regrets it greatly, because what du Maurier does is she will start the book at the end, and by the time you get to the end of the actual book, you've forgotten that you already know the ending, which is really incredible. She just gives it all away. But yeah, I wanted to scream at Philip this entire book. I also wondered, put in my notes, is Rachel a groomer? Because she is significantly older than Philip, and a lot of this read very yikes. We're going to talk a lot about mommy issues. And I thought it would be interesting to see the roles reversed in this book. If it was a young heiress and this older man that comes in and swindles the heiress. I guess that's more common, but it just felt, I don't know, it felt like that would be an interesting story to see. Cat is meowing. So there's the repetition of the first line at the end, and that first line is, they used to hang men at 4 turnings in the old days. Not anymore, though. So that's the first line of the book, and it's the last line of the book. And I'm questioning why. And I knew, when I read that first chapter, I was like, she's going to sandwich this. This is going to be at the end. I know it. And it was, but I'm thinking, does that mean that Philip thinks he deserves to hang for Rachel's death? Because, he let her walk to her death. He didn't push her or anything, but he did not warn her about the bridge. I don't know if you have thoughts about that. Why do you think she repeated that sentence at the end? I felt like the symbol of the hanging man at the beginning when Philip is a child was going to be a really, really important symbol throughout the book. And there were a couple of references, but overall, I'm not sure. So let's look at some actual lines from the book and what we can get out of them. So this is the very beginning when he's with Ambrose and he sees the hangman. Here is Tom Jenkin, honest and dull, except when he drank too much. It's true his wife was a scold, but that was no excuse to kill her. If we killed women for their tongues, all men would be murderers. So I felt maybe that's a bit of foreshadowing, so I tagged it on my first read-through. And then knowing what happens at the end, it makes me wonder, what did he kill Rachel for? Was it for her tongue? Was it for her, what he saw as her devious plot to steal everything from him? It just brings up questions of, why do men kill women? And was she even guilty? This woman was not. His wife was a scold. Okay, she didn't deserve to die. There's a lot of talk about men and women's roles, and specifically women being obnoxious, and since this is written by a woman, it's very interesting. You know, that she chose to have this male, I wouldn't even call him protagonist, but narrator. So he's talking to his godfather, Nick Kendall, who says, there are some women, Phillip, good women very possibly, who through no fault of their own impel disaster. Whatever they touch somehow turns to tragedy. I don't know why I say this to you, but I feel I must. It's really scratching at the door. I'm sorry. And there's a lot of talk about how Phillip grew up never really being around women other than his godfather's daughter Louise, who he sees as a sister, and how he would hate to have women and children around the house. And I just thought this was a funny way to describe not wanting children. It would become an alien place, stuffy, smelling of boiled milk and blankets put to dry, like the living rooms of cottages that I so often visited, where there lived young children. In my imagination, I could see them crawling with fretful cries upon the floor, forever bumping heads or bruising elbows, or worse, dragging themselves up upon one's knees, their faces puckering like monkeys if denied. Oh God, was all this in store for Ambrose? So he was really pitying his cousin, thinking oh, he's not living the bachelor life anymore, he must be miserable. And just puckering like monkeys if denied. I liked that. So I think, I don't read the romance genre, so sue me if I'm wrong, but I really think her being categorized that way sometimes is ridiculous, and that her writing sets her apart, at least from the kind of mass market romance that you see, like the little, mass market paperbacks, the little fat ones that are cheaper to produce, the ones where people churn out like 5 books a year. I just feel like her writing is better than that. So this part where he's in Florence, I just liked this description. It says, the city slept. I was the only loiterer. Even the solemn bells were silent, and the only sound was the river sucking its way under the bridge. It ran more swiftly now, it seemed, than in the day, as though the water had been pent up and idle during the long hours of heat and sun, and now, because of night, because of silence, found release. Ooh. Very cool description of the river. Okay. So there's a lot of talk about Philip's age in this book. He starts, well, in the very beginning we see him as a young child, but he's mostly 23 to 25 in the actual action of this book. It was a belief of Ambrose's, said my godfather, taking off his spectacles as he handed me the document to read for myself, that no young man knows his own mind until he turns 25. And I just put facts. Yeah, Philip really exemplifies, is that the right word? I'm not sure. He shows us the perfect example of a young, foolish boy. And I think, I'll say more about this later. I love her dog descriptions. There are dog descriptions in every du Maurier book that I've read, and usually she talks about the dogs nosing at your hand. This says, one of the younger dogs woke up and licked my hand. I pulled his ears to give myself employment. I pulled his ears to give myself employment. I just love that sentence. This is a great description of how awkward Philip is, how he really hasn't come into his own, and how when he's going to come into his own, when he's going to come of age, turning 25, he does so with Rachel already there, and he's in a very different... Sorry, I have to let my cat in. Because he is meowing so much and I feel terrible. You can come in. You can come in. But he does so, he comes of age with Rachel there, and it's a really unnatural coming of age. It's not the way that he had planned it or imagined it. Hello, baby. So he kind of goes from childhood this is hard to explain what I'm trying to say. He goes from childhood with no parents and with just this bachelor cousin being basically his father figure, to suddenly losing that father figure and being presented with, well, if she's the wife of the father figure, a mother figure. And he never really grew up properly, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of talk of him being really, really tall, like ungainly. And there's this part where he meets Rachel and he's sitting in the chair in her boudoir. I found now that if anyone was at fault, it was myself, for I felt oddly large and clumsy in so small a room, and the chair in which I was sitting might have been made for a dwarf. There is nothing so defeating to ease of manner as being uncomfortably seated, and I wondered what sort of a figure I must cut, hunched there in the damnable little chair, with my large feet tucked awkwardly beneath it, and my long arms hanging down on either side of it. And that's just an astute observation, because how many times have you been seated uncomfortably? I'm pretty uncomfortable right now, honestly. I'm never in a very comfy chair in these videos. But like if you're already in a situation that's making you nervous, like he's meeting this woman that he has been imagining is the devil, and now he's seated in this chair where his arms are just like hanging over and he looks really, really awkward. And when you already feel awkward and you know you look awkward, it's 1,000 times worse. But I thought that was a good, like, symbol of their dynamic, what I will talk about later, the power imbalance between them. Okay. So he's already warming up to Rachel and, like, not understanding why he hated her so much before she got there. He said, I was relieved when the letters came. They gave me a reason for hating you. Up till then, there was nothing I could go upon, and I was ashamed. Why were you ashamed? Because I believe there is nothing so self-destroying and no emotion quite so despicable as jealousy. Facts. He was like a little child, you know, when daddy gets a new girlfriend and you're no longer like the number one in their life, you're jealous of that woman, and that's what he was like. So we're getting into the mommy issues now. Starting with baby. No. Don't eat the plant. This is where I keep all my. They're all cat safe plants, so if the cats do chew on them, it's okay. But it's like, it's not great, you know, because they kind of go absolutely wild when they get in here. They're like, plants we can eat, because the plants in my house, in the rest of the house, have to be fake, and I keep this door shut. Anyway, exposition. But now, looking at my cousin Rachel, I wondered about my mother. Had she knelt there on that footstool beside my father? Had she sat back and clasped her hands on her lap in front of her and listened to the sermon? And afterwards, did she drive back home and go to pick me from my cradle? I wondered, sitting there as Mr. Pascoe's voice droned on, what it had felt like as a child being held in my mother's arms. Had she touched my hair and kissed my cheek and then, smiling, put me back into the cradle? I wished suddenly that I could remember her. Why was it that a child's mind could not return beyond a certain limit? I had been a little boy staggering after Ambrose, shouting to him to wait for me. Nothing before that, nothing at all. Okay. Mommy issues. I wrote on my notes about Rachel. He's too young for you, bro. Yeah. He's 24, she's 35, and he has lived a completely different life, totally sheltered. Her life has not been like that. She's been through a lot. And this is an interesting point that, you know, he had been a little boy and there's nothing before that, and I would argue there's not much after that. He just didn't grow up, you know, with a normal upbringing. He did go to boarding school, it seems, but would always come back to this place where he had this influence telling him, oh, no. You know, we don't have women around. Women are basically good for nothing. We don't need them. And he's got Louise, his godfather's daughter, who's pretty, I would say in love with him, but maybe not desperately so. Um, but he's so immature. He is so deeply immature. And the way that he is wondering about his mother and mixes that up with the way that Rachel kissed him, it is disturbing. And Rachel absolutely, even if she is innocent of poisoning people and killing them, I think she is very guilty of grooming him and playing into the mommy issues. And definitely manipulated him to get all the money in the estate, for sure. I think we can agree on that. I mean, I don't know. Are we being swayed by the narrator? Come here, baby. Come here. What does this say? Oh, he's so scared of his emotions. Nothing of this could compare to 5 minutes with a woman whose mood of gaiety had turned in a single instant to hostility. And was the final weapon always tears, because they knew full well the effect upon the watcher? So that... it's like... he's got so much working against him. He's very emotionally repressed, which is a thing in England. It's a thing in the Victorian era. It's a thing, unfortunately, for boys who are raised to not show their emotions and be a man. And he didn't have his mother around at all growing up. So he's got all this working against him. He is terrified of women crying, can't handle it, has to tell them to stop. And, oh, that annoys me so much. But, so he's not only afraid of other people's emotions, I would say that he's afraid of his own. Because if you can't handle seeing somebody cry, that has something to do with you. That's your feelings that can't handle it. Okay. Stop eating the plant. Stop eating the plant. Okay, some more mommy issues. Ooh. Bend down, she said. She took my face between her hands and kissed me. Now go to bed, she said, like a good boy, and sleep well. She pushed me away and drew her curtains. So I just wrote, Mommy! Mommy. Mommy? Sorry, Mommy. Mommy? That's Phillip the whole book. He's just like, he's very confused. And kind of wish that had been more of a, I don't know, I wish that was covered more in the book, but like maybe we're just supposed to interpret that ourselves, and he doesn't know that he has those issues, so it wouldn't make sense for him as the narrator to be really talking about them in a more clear manner than he does by just mentioning Mommy. But it is so gross that she does that. Stop eating the plant! Please stop eating the plant! Please! Okay, so another look at Phillip. Just, he's not good with women, with his opinions about women. He's very backwards. So here we see Rachel come down for Christmas, and she's wearing the pearl collar that he's given her that he shouldn't have given her. It was the only piece of jewelry upon her person. It glowed soft and white against her skin. I had never seen her look so radiant or so happy. Louise and the Pascos had been right after all. Rachel was beautiful. So she's beautiful now that she's all dressed up in what Phillip gave her. Okay. He's created this version of her that he wants to look at, that he's okay with looking at. So she's still in mourning. She's still wearing black, but, now I have put my stamp on her. I've made my mark. She's my woman because I gave her these pearls. And therefore now she is beautiful. You are beautiful because of what I do for you. Disgusting. So speaking of the jewelry again, when he's like totally manic the night before his birthday and goes and gets all the jewels out of the bank and climbs up into her window and gives them to her. And then, oh no, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is still Christmas, so I guess this is foreshadowing to when he actually does that. But Nick Kendall says, we got to take that pearl collar back to the bank. You're not 25 yet. It's not appropriate. And he says, I was so bitter and angry I could have ridden to the bank upon the instant and gone to the vaults and brought back every piece of jewelry there, every stone, every gem, and given them to her, and all the gold and silver in the bank as well. I could have given her the world. So all he knows how to give and all she knows how to receive is just things of monetary value. So it's said over and over again in the book that she has a spending problem, she is very extravagant, and the only way to her heart is money. And as soon as she has her own allowance, she is already spending it and going into overdraft. So, you know, we know that she has that about her personality, that she is shallow in that way, and Phillip is clearly shallow too in the way that he shows love. So it's very sad. They're kind of perfect for each other in a terrible way because, yeah, they both have the same issues there. But then, hey, why not some more mommy issues while we're at it? So he's imagining their future together. I would be with Wellington and Tamlin and the rest and wait upon her bidding, cap in hand. I think had I been a little lad, I would have cut a caper from sheer love of living. Talking about your future with this much older woman and then comparing yourself to a little boy, a psychologist would have a field day with you. I'm not a psychologist. I'm an armchair psychologist and an armchair philosopher. And I'm not even in an armchair right now, and I wish that I was. I am so deeply uncomfortable. Okay. More mommy. So this is just some foreshadowing, where she says, why did you not come to the boudoir for your tisana, she asked. I did not care to do so. I replied, you are very ridiculous, she said. You behaved at dinner like a sulky schoolboy in need of a whipping. So in this one we have poison and mommy. I took that line as very clear. Like when she's so pushy about giving him this damn tea, what are you doing to the tea? Obviously you're doing something to it, or you wouldn't want to. I felt like a lot of the foreshadowing in this was really obvious, and now I'm wondering if that's intentional because du Maurier wanted us to think a certain thing and in the end was just going to yank the rug out from under us and say, yo, actually, you decide if she's guilty or not. Take all that, what you thought was me being a lazy writer and putting really obvious foreshadowing in, take all that and wonder now, what actually happened? What is the truth? So I think that's so clever. And it makes me feel better because I was like, why is this so obvious that she's poisoning him? But anyway, this bit about being a sulky schoolboy in need of a whipping, gross. Rachel, tone it down. Gross. Ugh. I mean, no kink shaming, but okay. If this was like two consenting parties, whatever, you understand where I'm coming from. So here is a bit about the power imbalance. Rinaldi has this thing about Englishmen are like, they exercise too damn much, and it's such a problem, and Italians, they like to take their naps. Phillip thinks I could sense his mockery of me, a cart horse with a turnip head, and the way Rachel came to my rescue. Once more, the teacher with her pupil made me more angry still. So, the teacher with her pupil. Okay. No kink shaming. But there's just another way of putting it. They have a power imbalance. Rachel is much, much older than him. She has seen more of the world than him. She has experienced so much more. She's lived in poverty. She's had to marry for money. She has been through things with and because of men that Phillip can't imagine. And it isn't fair that she takes all of her worldly knowledge and uses it to manipulate this basically kid, because even though he's 24, he might as well be a child in terms of his social development and understanding of the world. He's been so sheltered. So huge power imbalance. So I like see her as the villain most of the time, but then then he gets violent with her, and then he's the villain too. And it's just two awful people being awful to each other. It's really tough. Yeah, not a happy book. Does she write any happy books? I don't care. I don't care for happy books, but I'm just asking. So he is imagining, this is a great example of how ridiculously naive and young he is, imagining their future together. My mind was empty, without thought, my body calm and still. No problems came swimming to the surface, no anxieties itched their way through from the hidden depths to ruffle the blessed peace. It was as though everything in life was now resolved, and the way before me plain. The years behind me counted for nothing. The years to come were no more than a continuation of all I now knew and held, possessing. It would be so forever and ever, like the amen to a litany. In the future only this, Rachel and I, a man and his wife living within themselves, the house containing us, the world outside our doors passing unheeded, day after day, night after night, as long as we both should live. That much I remembered from the prayer book. So this is all his ridiculous ramblings after they sleep together. Typical. So he's in this like blissful state of, it's gonna be beautiful forever, and really she says later, I just did that to thank you for the jewels, which is really sad when you think about it, that she thinks she needs to sleep with him for to thank him for the jewels. You can tell that kind of hints at what she's been through in her life. But yeah, I just put, it ain't that simple. You know, he thinks he's engaged to her now, and that there will never be problems again. You know when you get engaged to your dead cousin's widow, and there are all these accusations about her being a poisoner, and you know, letters in your cousin's own hand saying that she has done these things. You know, when that happens, and then you give her a bunch of jewels and you sleep together, and then you think you're gonna live happily ever after. You know what I mean? We all fall for it, don't we, every time that happens? So yeah, he becomes incapable of coping with reality and is living his good vibes only life. We can see here. It seemed to me she had never looked more lovely. If I could recapture my mood of early morning, the stillness and the peace, and blend it with the folly of the afternoon among the primroses under the tall beech trees, then I would be happy once again. She would be happy too, and we would hold the mood forever, precious and sacred, carrying it into the future. Yeah, good vibes only. So forget all the terrible stuff that happened in between. Forget her saying we are not engaged, and get away from me. Forget all that and just hold on to like the good moments, and then we're golden. And in a way, I'm like, yeah, I understand. We've all done that. We've all been like, well, hang on, we were having a good time mere hours ago. What's happening now? Did I miss the change? Why do you suddenly hate me? So I felt for him with that. But then he goes nuts and tries to choke her, so no longer much sympathy. What is this? Communication is key. Oh yeah, so he's trying to figure out in his little brain, but why are we not engaged? Thought we were engaged. She had not understood what it was I asked of her at midnight, nor I in my blind wonder what she had given. Therefore what I had believed to be a pledge of love was something different, without meaning, on which she had put her own interpretation. This is a very fancy way of saying, we slept together, and I thought that meant like we're married now, and it didn't mean anything to her. It didn't mean anything. Yeah, classic. And it just shows how terrible they are at communicating with each other. There's so much of this book that is about communication, with all the letters that are sent and not received, or the letters that are tucked away and hidden, and we don't know if it's because they're being hidden on purpose, or like Ambrose is truly losing it at the end. Just so much about communication. It's an interesting theme. So at this point, yeah, this is where he loses it. Never leave me, I said. Swear it. Never, never. She tried to move her lips in answer, but could not do so because of the pressure of my hands. I loosened my grasp. She backed away from me, her fingers to her throat. There were 2 red wheels where my hands had been on either side of the pearl collar. Will you marry me now? I said to her. Now that I've choked you. You interested? Yeah, not good. He's fully off the deep end now. Like he's like, well, I guess I'll try anything at this point and see what sticks. Not a good idea, dude. Believing you can make someone love you. Okay, so he's doing that thing that we all do. I'm speaking for everybody in the world, I guess. Where we like try and justify what has happened when somebody dumps us or isn't interested, rejects us, whatever. Such a little while ago, so few hours in time, we had been happy. The exultation of my birthday eve and all the magic was now gone, frittered away by my own fault. Sitting in the cool parlor of the Rose and Crown, it had seemed to me that perhaps in a few weeks her reluctance to become my wife might be overcome. If not immediately, then later. If not later, then what matters, so long as we could be together in love as on my birthday morning. Hers the decision, hers the choice, yet surely she would not refuse. I had been almost hopeful when I had come into the house. But now the stranger, the third person, misunderstanding all about us still. So yeah, he's doing that thing where he's like, it's my fault that she doesn't love me. It's my fault she doesn't love me, so if I can fix this, this, and this, then yeah, we can go back to that one evening we had together where things were perfect and exactly as I wanted them, and when things were like that, I thought, this means they're going to forever be like that, even though if I was really using my noodle, I would be like, oh wait, every other time we've had together, she has not insinuated that she wants to marry me, so why would I take this, like when you have one great moment with somebody and you're like, this is a sign, and it overrides everything else, it overrides all the red flags they've ever given me, it overrides every time they've ever told me they're emotionally unavailable, and now everything is different because of this moment. So I see where you're coming from, Phillip, but it ain't gonna work. You're just grasping at straws. Okay, almost done. So he's talking to the gardener. He reached up to a branch, and where the flowers had fallen, the pods were already forming with the little seeds within. There was a fellow the other side of St. Austell who died eating these, said Tamlin, and he threw the pod away over his shoulder. So he's saying the seeds will kill the cattle. This is the laburnum tree, and it is poisonous. So as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, obvious. This is the same tree that Rachel had in her Italian villa. It felt so obvious. Like, obviously she's using these seeds to poison people. But like I said before, maybe she's being obvious on purpose to throw us off and make us really, really believe that Rachel was guilty. And then in the end, she like signs over. She takes all the jewels back to the bank and lists Phillip as her heir. And it's like, why would she do those things if she was just trying to get everything out of him that she could? It's really makes you wonder. So here we have this longing for a return to innocence, and this is the last line that I'll talk about. The sun came through the stained glass of the windows and shone upon her. I could see from my seat the round, rosy faces of the village children, yawning a little as they waited for the sermon to finish, and I could hear the shuffle of their feet pinched into Sunday boots, longing to be barefoot on the green in play. I wished passionately for one brief moment that I might be young again, and innocent, with Ambrose, and not Rachel, beside me in the pew. Boom. Perfect. This is practically the end of the book, and I think sums up what is the point that he never really grew up. Rachel caught him before his coming of age, and she got in there too early when his brain was still like in child mode, and confused him because he was on this threshold. He was between child and man, and he never fully grew into his adult self. So he realizes what a mess he's gotten himself into here at the end, and just wishes to go back to the innocence of childhood. Can I get rid of my obsessive love for this woman who, whether she meant to or not, has destroyed both Ambrose and I, and can I just go back to before all that? You know, not even all the way back to mommy, just to Ambrose, the one that I really miss and love. It's really, really sad. But yes, lots of thoughts and feelings about this one. I would love to know what you think about it. I think I would rank, of the books I've read so far, I would say Rebecca was my favorite, then Jamaica Inn, then this one, which does not mean I didn't like this one, just that those were tough acts to follow. And I will keep reading Daphne du Maurier. I'm not sure which one I want to go to next, but these Cornwall novels where you can like just feel the mist and the just so much talk of weather, and I love that. Oh, I'm obsessed with weather. The weather app is probably my most opened app on my phone. Anyway, you want to say bye? That's all for now, and I don't know what I have for you next time. I'm reading a George Saunders book of short stories right now. Hello, I love you. Oh, I put a big kiss on his face. Hi, Joey. But yeah, I got some ideas. We'll see. We'll see. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this beautiful, wholesome love story. So until next time, happy reading.